Okay, guys, we're back again. Another great episode of Oversteer TV Online, the podcast, the only podcast with the most obnoxious and boring and pretty hard to pronounce name, as you can see me tripping all over my own words. I'm here again, Tony Castanera. There's my buddy Jeff Brown, ready to talk about all things racing. 2-0 farts. We're not happy. We're grouchy. We're pissed. But I'm not pissed today because it's it. The season's over. Everything's fine. Ferrari won the Italian Grand Prix. Nothing else matters. It's over. NASCAR, phone it in. Indycar, nobody cares. World Rally Championship, they're going to Greece. That's still pretty cool, though. But anything else, just nobody, even Formula One, just pack it up. It's done. They won the Italian Grand Prix.
Yeah, they did. And once again, your favorite driver, Oscar Piastre, or whatever his name is, cost McLaren another win. He's done it again.
No, Lando Norris cost McLaren their win. Lando Norris, I've said it before. I mentioned on Twitter, and I was eviscerated on Twitter. Lando Norris doesn't have the balls, the testicular fortitude to be world driving championship. Once again, he was on pole, and once again, he wasn't leading the race after the first lap. Okay?
And that was because of his teammate.
Yeah, well, his teammate wants to win, and I don't blame him. I
realized that, and he could have won, except for the fact that he pulled that move on the first lap that cost McLaren the win. I wouldn't care if Piastri won or if Norris won. I didn't, but one of them should have won. But Piastri, is that his name?
Piastri.
Yeah, whatever. He cost them another win. I didn't care which one of them won. He could have followed the leader, and the two of them could have been first and second in that first lap. They could have pulled away from Verstappen. They could have blocked Verstappen out of it, and then they could have fought it out between themselves for the win. But instead, he pulled that move that gave Verstappen the lead. And then they fought it out for second.
Stop saying Verstappen. Verstappen was way back in sixth. He was way back in the back.
I mean Leclerc.
As usual, Jeff, you're totally wrong when it comes to this. It's a start. Piastri went for it. He passed. Lando Norris had a terrible start again. Piastri and Leclerc were there. They put their elbows out and they go, okay, well, I'm not going to give up my space. It's up to you to push me out. Of course, Lando Norris said, I know, I'm too scared, and fell back. And Piastri was running a great race. The strategy by McLaren cost Piastri the race, if you ask me. They brought him in way too late. They should have, by the first lap, they should have said, okay, Norris ain't going to win this thing. Let's give it to Piastri. But no, they have this, I don't know what's going on with Lando Norris, why they love him so much. And they screwed up Piastri. Piastri should have won that race. But then when it came right down to the strategy, is Ferrari had it, and Ferrari had the racing gods on their side. And
Enzo Ferrari looking down from above.
Exactly. And let's face it, there's nothing more spectacular than the podium at Monza when Ferrari wins. That sea of tifosi, as they're called. I mean, these people literally buy 100-foot long flags for Ferrari logos and carry it with them every year to the race, brings it with them and hope that Ferrari wins.
Well, they got their wish.
And the flares, everybody going out with the smoke stuff, the red smoke, that it was funny. The cameras had to cut away. They ended up having to show the podium from a drone because all the cameras at ground level were being blocked by the smoke.
And I believe F1 has banned all those smoke things.
Yeah, well, that's they can ban all they can ban all they want.
But I would hate to be somebody that had to go home and cough up all the red phlegm from those smoke bombs, and you can't get the fresh air. You'd be coughing up bread for 3 days. And I guess if you're Italian, you'd love that.
No, it's it was amazing podium. Even my wife, my wife Yolanda, she's of Italian descent. She's not Italian, from way back when. Italian. Even then, when she's not even a race fan, but I put on the podium, and she's like, she had a little tear in her eye, and she starts singing the Italian national anthem. She's walking a little taller the last few days.
What part of Italy is she from?
North. Actually, her family originally is from a place outside of Genoa, not too far from Maranello, about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from Maranello. So, everybody was Italian on Sunday.
Won that race herself, then.
Pardon me?
She practically won that race herself.
Oh, of course. I helped her though.
Yeah. She couldn't have done it without you.
They couldn't have. Of course not. I was there rooting for him the whole time, pushing him.
Of course, Oscar Piastre.
Yeah, they
couldn't have done it without Oscar.
I was whispering to Leclerc, "Hey, don't mess this up, man! Don't mess this up."
Well, they messed it up on the first lap. He could have fell in line, and they could have pulled some distance on him and had a chance. I'm not saying they would have won it, but I'm saying that it did cost them the race.
Yeah, it cost them maybe some points. Red Bull's really kind of like they were terrible at Italy. I know what happened. I think what he's qualified like 6th or something, like worst qualifying he's had like in 2 years. Finished 6th. But the Lando has still a slight chance to win the drivers' championship. I really doubt it's going to happen. But the constructors' championship, which is where the money is at, the constructors' championship has closed up. McLaren's only 8 points behind, and Ferrari's like something like 30 points behind too. So it's kind of closed up there. So the problem
as long as Oscar Piastri is driving for McLaren, they won't win because his selfishness has cost them 2 wins now.
I like Piastri. I think if I was going to have to get rid of one driver, I'd get rid of Norris. He belongs in a back marker. The problem with Red Bull is they should have locked up the constructors championship already, but Verstappen's teammate Perez is just having a terrible season. Terrible. There's even talk about sacking him in the middle of the season and bringing in somebody else, but I guess he had a real good contract and really good lawyers.
He brought in a lot of money, I guess.
Yeah, probably a lot of money. IndyCar, you saw the IndyCar race, right?
I saw the second one.
Yeah.
My DVR somehow doesn't like to record the first one.
Well, the first one was on Peacock, so you couldn't get it.
Okay, then that's why I didn't record. I was wondering why I didn't record.
Yeah, I had to watch the replay of the first one because I'm not going to pay money for Peacock just to watch 2 races.
Well, I actually have Peacock, so I could have watched it, but I didn't realize.
But the first race was, I don't know, it was a sleeper, if you ask me. Nothing much happened except Newgarden, who was one of the dominating drivers, got knocked out again, no fault of his own. And then I shook my head at the end when I saw that Connor Daly came in 3rd, and I go, is that how bad the quality of the drivers are in IndyCar, that Connor Daly can still come in 3rd? Connor Daly, who's like the epitome of, I don't know why he keeps on they keep on pulling him out, giving him rides, and the man has done nothing but underperformed his entire career. He gets a 3rd. It was an oval track race. He got up there with pit strategy and stuff like that. The second race, once again, you saw it at the start. I don't know what was going on at that start. Newgarden got knocked out again by the same guy. Yeah. I'm not even going to say the guy's name. What drove me crazy is first the championship leader, who probably could have taken over and won the championship Sunday, Alex Palau, 3-time champion.
But he didn't even start the race.
Yeah, his car died. It was obviously something wrong with the new hybrid that IndyCar is using, and not a great way to lose all those points. He got back in the race like 20 laps down to score a few points there. I don't blame him. And so what happens then? Will Power, who's really the only person that has a chance to catch them, you figure, okay, this is a chance to really close up. So Will Power is doing it. He's right in the front and everything. Near the late in the race, there's a yellow flag. Then they do a green flag restart. And what does Will Power do? Spin out.
We lost it.
Spin out on a restart all by himself. How many starts and restarts in IndyCar has Will Power done in his lifetime? Probably a couple of hundred times. And one time where he just really needed to be, hey, I really need to do a good restart and not mess up. What does he do? All by himself. He messes up. I don't know.
And he still had a chance at that point. Didn't they change his front wing?
Yeah,
for some reason.
He was like in third place. He could have gotten some good points. He was running for the front. He had a chance to win the race.
But they brought him in and changed his front wing when they didn't need to, really.
After, yeah.
And he ended up 2 laps down. When he came in and got tires, and the front tire changer checked the front wing, gave the thumbs up that like it was okay. Mm-hmm. And then a lap later, they came in and changed his front wing, and he went laps down, and that was it.
Yeah.
They could have at least tried to hold him out there,
I heard something that they checked it at first and it seemed okay, but when he went out there and did a lap, a piece fell off, and they heard that the IndyCar was going to black flag him if he didn't come in and replace the wing. So that's why they brought him in. Nobody in the TV broadcast, I guess, heard that or whatever. That's what reports I'm hearing. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't think, Penske's not the guy to make that kind of mistake.
Well, I don't think, Penske back in the day, he was always somebody's strategist or making the calls on the radio and things like that. I don't think he does that anymore. I think he's more of a spectator and let the teams do it themselves.
He does it mostly. Penske wasn't even there Sunday, which is the other thing. He was in Penske hopped on after the Saturday race. He hopped on his plane and went down to Austin, Texas, because the World Endurance Championship was running down in Circuit of the Americas, and he has a team. He runs the Porsche factory team, and so he is like, okay, Milwaukee's boring. I'm getting up on a plane. I'm going to go down to Austin. So he was there. Penske doesn't call many races anymore. He does the Indy 500. I know he does that. Course. Yeah, he does the. I think he was even he called Newgarden's race for his second time he won the Indy 500. I don't know, man. IndyCar. I grew up in Indy. Both, we used to go to those races in Homestead, and remember they used to Champ Car downtown. It was such a great series, but right now it's like every time they try to do something, they I don't know, they mess up.
Yeah, and like I've said many times, it's because they don't have the big name. Who do they have? They have the Ray Hall kid.
Yeah, Graham. Well,
Graham Ray Hall. They did have Marco Andretti, but he was terrible and retired.
They were trying to push Colton Herta on us, who's good, but he messes up too many times. He does have the talent, but I don't know. I guess he has these brain farts every once in a while. It's interesting because we're talking about the popularity in drivers and things in IndyCar. NASCAR last week, they announced their schedule for 2025, and they're adding a road course race in Mexico City. Smart. They're going to use the same track Formula One uses. IndyCar people were like, hey, IndyCar should be in Mexico City, right? And they're talking to Mark Miles, the guy who runs IndyCar, and he said, well, there's nobody in IndyCar right now who's that popular in Mexico, and and they asked him about Pato O'Ward, and he goes, well, he's not as popular as Adrian Fernandez was, or whatever. And so he caught all kinds of stuff, even though he's telling the truth. Adrian Fernandez is kind of like a god down there, but all these IndyCar fans say, well, why are we racing down there? And I go, it's easy. Money.
Yeah.
If you want to have an IndyCar race in Mexico City, you can have an IndyCar race in Mexico City. Just whip out that checkbook. You have to promote it. You have to tell IndyCar, write IndyCar check, come on down, get the sponsors, do all that stuff, talk with the people, run the track and everything. It's not easy. And I know IndyCar tries to get a race down there. They try to get a race at a lot of places, but if the money's not there, the money's not there.
Yeah, let me grab my checkbook.
Yeah.
But I guess NASCAR is going with their famous Mexican driver, Daniel Suarez.
Right.
I don't know how popular he is down there, but I imagine he is.
He's quite popular. He does a lot of advertising in Latin TV and stuff. I see him all the time in Spanish TV, Spanish language TV.
And he's a good driver.
He's a good driver too. And also,
I'd like to see him on a top tier team and see how he did.
Yeah, there's a strong connection NASCAR with the Mexican American community too. It's like when the NFL plays in Mexico City. Oh, there are no Mexican NFL players. Who cares? They got 100,000. They got 100,000 people in the stadium.
Yeah.
Look at the NFL's tomorrow night. They're going to be having a football game in Brazil, an NFL game. And I heard it's a sellout. It's going to be over 100,000 people in that stadium.
Wow.
If you have a product and it sells, people will pay it for it, and it'll happen. People like Milwaukee. Everybody made a big deal. They're back on Milwaukee. They said the reporters are saying it was almost 40,000 people for the weekend. That was great. I'm like 40,000 people for over 3 days.
Not very good.
That means the whole speedway in Milwaukee is a tiny speedway. It holds 37,000 people. Okay. I don't know. They're going to be back next year. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I know the Darlington Raceway was packed. I mean, there was standing room only at the Southern 500. It was. I haven't seen crowds that large in NASCAR in a few years, and I've always judged the economy by the attendance of NASCAR races. And when the economy's doing bad or somebody gets elected that they don't like, they don't show up for the race. But the economy's doing great. Everybody's happy, making money. Boom. Packed grandstands. So I kind of judge how the economy is doing by the attendance at NASCAR races. I don't know,
Well, also NASCAR has
how legitimate that is, but it seems to coincide.
I also see that NASCAR hasn't really been raising ticket prices as of late. I remember when they had a problem when NASCAR had that big boom, and then all of a sudden it started dying off. That's because they had a big boom, and NASCAR says, "Oh, we can charge more," and they started raising ticket rates. And tickets that used to cost $20 all of a sudden were $120 at some tracks and stuff. And people are like, "No."
And then what NASCAR did, like they did at Homestead Miami Speedway, is they started tearing down grandstands. Instead of showing empty grandstands on television, they just tore them down, and then there's no more empty grandstands.
Yes, at Daytona, the whole back straight had a whole thing of stands there. Those were gone like 5-10 years ago. Speaking of Homestead, you saw the new schedule for 2025, right?
No, I have not seen the schedule yet.
Well, for the playoff, Homestead's not in the playoff anymore. Homestead's back in March now.
Okay.
So they go to Daytona, then they go out to California, then they turn around and come back to Homestead. And that's I guess NASCAR's not too crazy about Homestead. They
had a lot of high hopes for Homestead Miami Speedway. They thought that they were going to come in and pull in the Hispanic and the Latin crowd that lived down here, and it just never materialized for them. They were able to sell out the championship races, but those were mostly out-of-towners.
Right.
If you talk to people in Miami, they didn't even know the race was going on.
Yeah. I love the Speedway. It's a great facility and everything, but you got to look at it also geographically. It was like I remember growing up. When I used to want to go to concerts and stuff, none of the big bands would come to Miami because it was just too far out of the way.
Yeah.
We're way down here at the tip, so to speak, and so it's not an easy drive for a lot of people to get down there. And even in Miami-Dade, you tell people in Miami, "Oh, I'm going to Homestead." You might as well tell them you're going to Philadelphia. Okay, that's Dade County is huge, and people in Miami don't go to Homestead from Miami.
They do now because they're all moving down here because it's cheaper to live here.
Yeah, it's cheaper to live there.
So they're all moving here, which I hate because now we've got so much traffic. I call it Little Kendall now. We just have so much traffic; it's unbearable.
Yeah, but so Homestead was always and for years Homestead, the Speedway had a problem with there are no hotels in Homestead. Now there are more hotels, but for years and years, people would come down and they'd have to stay in the Keys or an hour away in Miami. All the execs and all the top people, they were up staying in Miami or in Key Largo because there was no place to stay in the Keys. I love the facility. And I remember, like you said, in the beginning when they had the NASCAR race, they were the championship decider. It was like they finished the season for years in Miami, all three series. Then they took that away to put in Phoenix, but Miami was in the playoffs, and now they're not even in the playoffs anymore. Now it's in March, so
back to March. I think they originally started in March. Before the playoff system and the championship race and all that. The first seasons they started in March.
Yeah, back when they used to be what'd you call it? Remember the first race was the Pennzoil 400. And that wasn't the top. It was what they call it back then. The Busch Series, was it back then?
Yeah, the very first race was a Busch Series race. It was won by Dale Jarrett. I remember it because we were in Victory Lane with Dale Jarrett at that day. And that was long before we had a television show or anything else. Yeah. I was just a fan in the grandstands.
I remember we were doing stuff.
I just got up and walked down to Victory Lane. Nobody stopped me.
And we were in the host committee back then to welcome all the players, and we were doing all kinds of stuff with business and with that. And I remember this to commemorate it. I still have it. They gave us a long photo of all the drivers on the front straight. I don't know if you remember that.
I think so. I think I might still have that somewhere packed away in a closet.
Yeah, I have it tucked away, and it's got everybody. It's got the Jarretts. It's got Richard Petty. It's got Dale Sr. It's got Dale Jr. because they all came to race. All the big boys came to race in that Busch race, in that first race. Everybody wanted to race that first race there. So that was a good time. But it's oh well, what can you do?
No, you just have to roll with the punches, change with the times.
Yeah. No, I mean, Homestead used to have all kinds of. They used to have IndyCar there. They used to have IMSA there, American Le Mans, all kinds of sports car racing and stuff. The track makes a lot of money. It still does because it gets rented out all the time for track days and for commercials and for testing. They do a lot of testing out there. I mean, a couple of years ago, I asked out there, and they were saying that out of 365 days, they were booked over 300. So that facility makes a buttload of money for NASCAR.
Well, there's nowhere else to go in the wintertime. In the wintertime when you want to test, the seasons are over. There's it's snowing everywhere else, but not in Homestead.
Yeah, so a lot of auto manufacturers, they come down there and test their street cars there, believe it or not. A lot of testing, sometimes I'll be sitting watching TV and I'll see a commercial. Like, oh, that's Homestead. They tape a lot of car commercials down there. So,
speaking of NASCAR, they had the Southern 500 and they focused the entire race on Wallace and Buescher, who were the two drivers competing for that 16th and final spot to get into the playoffs, as it was the cutoff race. The next 10 races are going to be playoff races. And so they focused that entire race on these two drivers, and then it ended up Chase Briscoe came out of nowhere and won it as a first time winner, or not a first time winner, but a winner that hadn't won this season, and put himself in the playoff and knocked Wallace and Buscher out. So congratulations to Tony Stewart's number 14, Stewart Haas Racing, for making it into the playoffs, and now go away.
Now go away.
Well, that's what they're doing. They've already said that they're closing up shop and sold their charters.
Yeah, they're selling a couple, but I think that Tony Stewart said
I think they're already sold. Yeah, I'm not sure they're sold too, but I heard that they have been sold.
Yeah, that's another subject we got to talk about, is the whole charter system, because IndyCar is trying to do it too, and that'll take a whole show just discussing that. What's going on with that? The implications. Who won the race?
I'm not a fan of the charter system at all.
Who won the race Sunday? I forgot.
Chase Briscoe.
Chase Briscoe, yeah. So now we start the playoffs. Who do you think is going to do? Who do you think is going to win it all?
Who's going to win it all? Well, it's hard to bet against Kyle Larson, right, because he's consistently up front every week. He doesn't win every week, but he's consistently up in that top 5 every week. Yeah. And there's Kyle Busch has got an outside chance. He's been running well lately, but he's not in the playoffs, so he won't win it. He's just desperately trying to win a race, to have 20 years in a row of winning a race. And he's in panic mode right now because he's only got 10 more races to do it. That's a thing. He's finished second the last 2 weeks in a row, and if he could have won one of those, he would have got himself into the playoffs, had 20 years consecutively of winning a race, and would have been on top of the world. But he's Kyle Busch, so nobody wanted him to do that.
Right.
Everybody was happy except Kyle Busch and Richard Childress, I guess, because
I know all the drivers were just like, yeah, I'm not going to win the race. I'm just going to give it to Kyle Busch so I can feel good. Warm and fuzzy. No.
No, if there was like 3 or 4 more laps in this Southern 500, Kyle Busch would have won it. He just ran out of laps. He ran out of time.
If it was the Southern 504, he might have won it, but it's not.
504.
Anyway, because we're going to a playoff system, that's the thing. Like normally I would say, Kyle Larson be the pick, but it's one of these things when you're in the playoffs now, all he needs is some jerk to crash into him, knock him out of a race early, and that's it.
It knocked you out.
It knocks you out.
You still move on by winning. So you can just win one of the races and crash out of the other ones and still move on to the next level. Yeah. I would say Denny Hamlin has got to be one of the favorites, but he chokes every year. He's like the favorite every year, and then somehow finds a way to choke out of it.
You just love saying that about Denny Hamlin.
Well, it's true. I mean, what can you say?
There are 2 things that you can always bet on with this show. Jeff doesn't like Oscar Piastri. And Denny Hamlin chokes. The only certainties of life: death, taxes, and Jeff doesn't like Oscar Piastri. Denny Hamlin chokes. Okay, we're going to end the show on that one. Like and subscribe downstairs. Listen to us on Spotify. Also, I want to thank all you guys who listen to our podcast and don't think we're just total idiots. And if you think we're total idiots, okay, give us a comment, man. Why not?
Yeah, tell us.
And we'll be back next week with more I Hate Oscar Piastri by Jeff Brown. Sponsored by Denny Hamlin Chokes. All right, man. You have a good one, man.
All right, you too.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.